Hi guys, so welcome back to our tutorials. In today's tutorial, we're going to create this testimonial card. This you can use whenever you have a section of testimonials in your website, and then you can just loop over these testimonials. So let's get started. So the very first thing you might realize is that we do have some icons here. These icons come from Font Awesome. So the first thing we need to embed is Font Awesome CDN link, so that we can get access to that Font Awesome styles. So you just copy as I have copied. You just go to Font Awesome CDN.js libraries / Font Awesome, and then head over to the first link. It is the mini.css, all mini.css, and then copy the link tag and put it in your index.html. The next thing, before you even continue, let's add some fonts. So the font I'm going to use on this tutorial is called DM Sans. So head over to fonts.google.com and search for DM Sans. You can see it there, DM Sans. Then on the bottom, you can see a button that says Get Font. Just click on that, get embed code, and then make sure you don't have more fonts. So let me go here. Yeah, I only have one font, which is this. Just copy the import, don't copy the style, because we have a separate style file. Just do that. And then I have Copilot enabled. Let me disable this. All right, so the very next thing we are going to do is now starting to create this section. So what I'm going to do now is I'm also going to link our CSS file. So link CSS, and that's the CSS file which corresponds to the file name, which is style.css. So let's start creating this card very fast. So create a div with a class of card. You can use any class you want here. It's just that this is a card. You can call it testimonial card. Doesn't matter. So the very first thing we have here is the rating stars. So we can create a ratings div. This one will have all the 5 stars. We can go to Font Awesome. And in Font Awesome, let's look for the stars icon. So you just go to Font Awesome and search a font you want. No, as an icon you want. So you want the star solid. Make sure don't click on these that are pro versions. These ones you need to pay for them. So you copy, click on the icon and then copy. And then let's paste it here. All right, so let's also go live in this file. So to go live, as I have showed you countless time, go to and use the live server extension, and then you can see we have 1 star. All right, so we need to create 5 of them. So we just copy this down 5 times, and then we have 5 stars. The very next thing we need here is now this heading. So I'm going to use a heading level 3. A heading level 1 is the highest heading. So you don't want to use headings in your cards. So we can just do H3. And then let me copy this heading, which is the testimonial title or the subject. Just paste it. And then let's paste the description. You're just going to use a p tag. And use a p tag here and say paste the description. Nothing fancy happening. The ratings, the heading, the paragraph. You only just continue. And then let's create the author. The author, we can say .author. And then the author is has 2 things. The first thing the author has is the heading. Now the image itself, the avatar, and then it has another content. So we can say the author has 2 elements, this element and this element. And then the second element has 2 more elements, the heading and the tagline. So you're just going to create an image. And for the image, I'm going to use placeholder image. So the placeholder image that I'm going to use is this pravata.cc. Then this is the pravata.cc. So let me just even go to that website. So you can go to pravata.cc, which is a placeholder image, so you can choose any character you want and use it. All right. I think we can also use, I think we can use a random image. All right, I think this is okay. So let's use a random one instead of having a static one. So we have the image, and then we said it has two elements. The other has two elements, the image, and then let's use a div to wrap the next elements, which is now two elements. So two elements is the heading. Now we cannot use heading level 3. We can use heading level 4. And say John Doe, and then a paragraph, and say this one is from Kenya, or maybe the tagline. So if you go back, you can see we are getting some placeholder images. Now the issue with this is that this image is too large. So even before we go to CSS, let's minimize this image to a width of around 50. And then you can see we are still getting random images. So now let's go to the CSS file and start styling this. The very first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to write the default CSS styles. So a margin of 0, a padding of 0, and a box sizing of border box. Okay. And then let's grab the body. You can see the content is too close to the edges. So you can give a padding of 2 rem. And then we want this content to be in the middle. So let's grab the card itself and give it a fixed width. Then you can do maybe 350 pixels. Right, you can see the fixed width. Then let's place it in the middle. We are going to use flexbox. So display flex, justify content, center. Content is in the middle. The next thing we want to do is to make sure we use the font family we imported. So the font family is DM sans, and then as a fallback is sans serif. So you can do this by just checking here on the font family. Whenever there is a plus, you use a space, but you could just copy these from Google Fonts. It will still show you. All right, so we have the font ready. The next thing is the background color. Let's add a background color here of hash FF E6 D4. That's the background color we are going to use. And then let's make sure this color of the card, you can say background color here is white. Now the next thing that pops up is that this content it's too close to the edges in the card, so we can give the card some padding. Let's say maybe 1.5 rem, and then you can see now it looks a bit nice. The next thing is that these edges are too sharp. Let's use a border radius and say border radius of 5 pixels. Okay, that looks nice. And then let's create a CSS variable. So we're going to create a CSS variable called text color. And then you're going to say hash 555555, so that we don't have to repeat ourselves. And then back to our card, we want these elements to be displayed in the middle. We want to display them flex in a column way, and so that we can add some nice gaps between the elements. So we just go here and say display flex, and then flex direction of column, and then a gap of 0.5 rem. And then you can see some gaps being created here. So the next thing we are going to do now is to make sure that there's something new that you might see here is that we have some shapes. So the shape I'm using is this shape.svg. If you want this exact shape that I have, head over to my GitHub repository, github.com/techwithtwin/tiktok-projects, and then look for a project called Testimonial V1. So we just view all files and then let's look for the Testimonial V1. This is the Testimonial V1. Then make sure you just download this shape.svg. That's the shape there. So how are we going to use this shape? This shape will be displayed absolute to the card. So the card needs a position of relative. All right. So the next thing is that the items need to be displayed side by side. So we can grab the order then display flex, and see flex has kicked in. And then let's add some gaps. So you can say a gap of 0.4 rem. All right. And then we can align items to the center. So we can say align items to center. So the next thing we need to grab is the image. So the image is located at the avatar div and then the image. So we can just do dot other. Now then we grab the direct child, which is an image, and do a border radius of 50%. All right, that looks nice. So the next thing we need to do now is this text. We need to give it a color of our text color. So we can grab dot card and then the paragraph, and then let's give it a color of text color. Okay, you can see it. And then this font is very bold, so we can just go one step down. Font weight of 300 because the normal one is 200 and the normal one is 400, so we can go a step down. And then let's reduce the size of that text. So we can say font size 0.8 rem. That's too small, so let's do 0.9 rem. I think that is okay. All right, so finally let's add the shape. This is the shape we are going to add. So what you can notice on this shape is that this shape is displayed absolute to the card, and the card needs the position relative. So let's go ahead and create this shape. So let's go before the closing of the card. So we can come here and say dot shape. Inside the shape, let's create an image, and the source is our SVG. If you go back here, you can see it here on the bottom. So you're going to display it absolute and place it on the top. So what you are going to do is call the shape and then say a position of absolute. So when you do position absolute, it doesn't know where to be placed. So we can say a right of 5%, and see it there, and then to push it all the way up, you just do a top of 0. All right, and the shape has been created successfully. So the next thing, we want to make sure that the ratings icons are color red. So we just grab the dot ratings and then the I. So we can just say dot rating I, and then a color of red. All right, so we are almost done. The final thing you are going to do is to add some box shadow to the card. So we can go to box shadow, getcsscan.com, and then look for CSS box shadows. So we can hover over these shadows, and then I'm already liking this. So just click it to copy it. And then let's go back there, and then on the card, let's paste the box shadow back in, and then now our card pops up. And that's it, guys. That's how you create such a card using HTML and CSS. So thank you for watching, and see you next. Make sure you like, follow, and share with your friends.